it is like asking why a few more time, doing what you do in a way.
Yeah, so there's a concept in business analysis called 5 whys.
Okay.
And if you follow the methodology completely, it says you shouldn't design a solution if someone can't go 5 whys deep.
What makes a difference between someone that is good and someone that is exceptional in terms of architecturing from your point of view?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's someone that can, it sounds really corny, but someone that can see into the future.
Okay.
And if I think about the excellent solution architects that I work with today, they're able to understand, okay, this solution solves the problem today, but is it scalable? Is it going to solve the same problem for this business in 2 years' time or 3 years' time or 4 years' time?
Okay.
If you work with a business and they're growing 10% year on year or 20% year on year, the solutions that you put in today are not maybe going to be the right ones in 2 years' time or 3 years' time.
Okay.
So that's always the really interesting part for me is when I work with a really good solution architect, is being able to think about, this is the right solution today and it solves the problem today, but does it give us the right foundation moving forward?
Do you feel like now working in sales and have this background in computer science really help to build trust with the customer?
Yeah, I guess my journey was a little bit atypical in terms of I wasn't particularly academic in school. I didn't particularly enjoy studies, but I found that once I got into working different roles, I enjoyed kind of understanding challenges and how can I identify the challenges that I'm working with? What are the potential solutions for them? And that kind of led me into, I guess, more of a BA role. And then from there, interested in computer science as well. So I guess computers is always an interest for me. It was always a hobby, and didn't originally see it as a job. Okay. But I guess to your question, I find it really helpful because when in sales, it's a lot about problem solving. It's a lot about working with customers. It's a lot about trying to understand, what is the outcome you're trying to achieve? And I think by having a background in delivery and science and understanding the technicalities of how solutions work allows me to build credibility with a lot of our customers and a lot of, understanding in terms of what it is they're trying to achieve.
And what do you feel is important to learn outside of Google Vertex and Salesforce, for example? Is there other products that you have in mind that are key?
Yeah, I think, and you touched on it a second ago, I think data cloud is also a big one. And I think it's oftentimes it's the part that people miss when thinking about an Agentforce implementation as well, because it's the bit in the background that no one sees. It's where all the data lives. It's where all the reporting comes from. It's where all the auditability is. That for me is also a key concept. And I guess it goes the same for any AI implementation, is learning where the data comes from and learning where the data is stored as well. Like AI as a tool and AI as a function is amazing. But it's only as good as the model that it's trained on and the data that it has access to. So for a consultant thinking about implementing those types of tools, being aware of the underlying data, and whether that's data cloud, whether that's BigQuery, whether that's AWS, it's just having an understanding of that infrastructure. And one of the concepts I've learned is the difference between endpoint solutions and process solutions.
I don't know what's the difference.
So we're very much at a point today where we implement endpoint solutions. We look at how something is done today and we look to automate it. And so I guess in my example, we of the CX team, we look at the role that a CX agent does today, and we look, can we replace that with agentic AI? And we go, okay, great, yes, we can. I think the next step beyond that is, how do we design processes that are AI native? How do we design, don't take a process that's done by a human and automate it. It's how do we design that process that it could be done by AI and it could be done differently? I think that's, I guess, the next iteration of how we start to look at solutions is not how do we replace processes that were designed to be run by humans. It's how do we design processes that are actually designed to be run by AI.
Hello everyone, today I'm with Craig Baker from Jarvis. So Craig is very well known in the Salesforce ecosystem. He's part of the advisory board for consumer good.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I've known Craig, sorry. Maybe I'll do it again, okay? Hello everyone, today I'm with Craig Baker from Jarvis. Craig is a very well-known figure in the Salesforce ecosystem. Craig is is a member of the Salesforce Advisory Board for consumer goods. So thank you, Craig, for being here. For those who don't know you already yet, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you for having me. Like you say, my name's Craig Baker. I'm an account partner at Jarvis, and I've spent quite a lot of time in Salesforce ecosystem, about 15 years, and built my way up from business analyst to consultant to solution architect. And then I had the great opportunity to build the Salesforce practice at Jarvis. And I really appreciate the opportunity from Yanis and Pascal that allowed me to do that. But yeah, essentially I spent the last 4 years building a Salesforce practice. And it was a really interesting journey. But one that I kind of wanted to wrap up, I guess, and say, right, okay, here's a project, and move into sales. I think sales is something that's always really interested me. Really interesting now to kind of see the sales world and what that means in terms of differences to delivery and how that does things.
Wow, that's very impressive. And I saw that you started your career, at least your study, in computer science. Do you feel like now working in sales and have this background in computer science really help to build trust with the customer?
Yeah. I guess my journey was a little bit atypical in terms of I wasn't particularly academic in school. I didn't particularly enjoy studies, but I found that once I got into working different roles, I enjoyed kind of understanding challenges and how can I identify the challenges that I'm working with? What are the potential solutions for them? And that kind of led me into, I guess, more of a BA role. And then from there, interested in computer science as well. So I guess computers is always an interest for me. It was always a hobby, and didn't originally see it as a job. But I guess to your question, I find it really helpful because when in sales, it's a lot about problem solving. It's a lot about working with customers. It's a lot about trying to understand, what is the outcome you're trying to achieve? And I think by having a background in delivery and science and understanding the technicalities of how solutions work allows me to build credibility with a lot of our customers and a lot of, understanding in terms of what it is they're trying to achieve.
Okay, that's very interesting because I feel it's also rare to have like a profile, a salesperson that is able to understand to the point that he did it before.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess it's becoming more common these days. I think you're seeing a lot more solution-driven sales as we are, I guess, relationship-driven sales. And that's not to say that either one is right or wrong, but it's a different approach. And I think for me, it works really well. As a person, I'm quite introverted. And I'm not, I guess, what you would think of as a typical salesperson in terms of going out, meeting people, doing dinners, drinks. That's not my comfort zone. My comfort zone, I guess, is understanding problems and coming up with solutions and helping people solve challenges. So I think having that background really helps. And I think it's really finding that different route into getting a sale and a different way of helping customers as opposed to, I guess, the more traditional way.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I saw that before that, so you had like some experience that were quite interesting, as you mentioned, like the BA role. Could you explain how there's few years being focused on problem mapping and solving, or process mapping and solving, is important in a Salesforce career.
Yeah, for me, I think it's always important to understand what's the outcome you're trying to achieve. What's the problem you're trying to solve? I think more often we're too quick to try and design the solution. We're too quick to try and understand, okay, this is what I want. This is the solution that I want. Okay. But we're not particularly good at understanding, okay, well, what's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the outcome you're trying to get from this? And I think having that background for me allows me to ask those questions. It allows me to think a little bit more around, okay, but yes, you might, and the old analogy I used to use, I worked in utilities for a long time, and it was when handheld devices were still starting to come through. And oftentimes we would have people come to us and say, I want an iPad. And I'd kind of talk to them and say, okay, you don't want an iPad. You want a handheld solution that allows you to capture information from the field. And that for me, I think is a really good distinction because people see someone walking around with an iPad and they see the outcomes that that person is achieving and what they're being able to do. And they look at it and go, I want one of those. But they don't look at, I guess, what's the work that's gone in to enable that solution, the underlying problems that person was able to solve through that solution. And I think that's having that background for me, I find really helpful because it helps me, I guess, understand business challenges a lot more.
Do you feel it is like asking why a few more time? Doing what you do in a way?
Yeah, so there's a concept in business analysis called 5 whys. And if you follow the methodology completely, it says you shouldn't design a solution if someone can't go 5 whys deep. And so if I take that iPad example, is I want an iPad. Okay, why? Because I want to be able to do things in the field. Okay, but why? And it allows you to just go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper.
That's very interesting.
And really try and understand, okay, what's the root cause? What's the root cause of this person's problem, or what's the root cause of the challenge? And designing a solution for the root cause rather than the symptoms, I think is a lot better way. And it's a better long-term solution as well.
Wow, that's very interesting. And I saw that after that you worked like a few years at High Page, no?
Yes.
And Menulog? No.
Yeah, so I guess the other way around. So Menulog are part of a global brand called Just Eat Takeaway.
Just Eat.
And that was, I guess, my route into Australia. I worked for Just Eat in London for a few years. And I guess quite an interesting story. I worked for them when I got married. So I got married and I went on my honeymoon. And I remember coming back from my honeymoon, and I'd probably been back a week or so. And my wife was in between roles at the time, and so she was a little bit flexible. I remember my boss came to me and he said, I've got a question, but the only answer is yes. I said, okay, what is it? I need you to go to Australia. In the next 2 weeks. Wow. Okay. So we just come back from our honeymoon. We were just getting settled back home. And then this amazing opportunity came up. Menulog is part of the Just Eat Takeaway brand. So they kind of wanted me to come out here and help a little bit, help understand some of the work that we'd done in London with the global brand, and how could that help in localized, and then potentially bring some of that information and skill set over to Australia. Anyway, long story short, that turned into a long-term role, and here we are.
And I think my question on that will be how different it is to work as a Salesforce professional at the end client rather than working in an agency. Is it a totally different role? Is it similar? What else?
Consulting is very different in terms of you context switch a lot more. I think end user, you're generally focused on one problem, one business, one set of challenges, one set of solutions. Consulting, it's very much many different clients, many different problems, many different solutions. And I think there's a time for both at different times in people's careers. For me, starting out as an end user and then moving into consulting, it worked really well because it allowed me, I feel like I'd always had a consulting mindset. I'd always felt like, and similar to kind of what we talked about earlier, I always felt like my goal was always to try and understand the problem, understand the challenge. So I was quite used to doing that within the businesses that I'd worked in. So moving into consultancy from a process perspective, for me, made sense. It was taking what I already did for one business, but just multiplying that over many different ones. But I also think the flip side works really well. I've seen people be really successful starting out in consulting and then moving into end user. So consulting is a really good opportunity to learn very quickly. You learn many different products, you learn many different businesses, you learn many different challenges. And that can be a really good way for someone to start their career. Getting that opportunity, getting that learning very early, and then being able to apply that to an end user directly. But other people I find it could be quite overwhelming as well. I think if you're quite new to the Salesforce ecosystem, trying to learn many different things at once and try and do many different things, it can be quite overwhelming. And sometimes my journey in terms of, I guess, starting end user and then moving into consulting could also help. And I think consulting today is moving to a world where knowing the products and knowing how they're implemented isn't enough. You need to know how they're applied to different industries. You need to know how they're applied to different businesses. So someone coming from, say, an insurance background that has implemented Salesforce in insurance and knows that really well, sure, they might only know insurance, but actually you could apply that to almost every insurance company in the market.
That's very interesting. So your advice is to be specialized in a range of products, but on top of that, to an industry vertical as well.
I think, people have got to find their own path. I think for me, it doesn't matter which path you choose, but you need to differentiate yourself. The market is so diverse today and it's so competitive that you need to have a way to stand out from the crowd. And that could be an industry specialization. It could be someone who knows a lot about the products and how they're applied to a certain industry. It could be that someone that knows the products really well and how they can be applied to many different industries. And there's different skill sets for different situations, but I think the general path of just learning the products isn't good enough anymore. You need to be able to apply them in a way that's unique to you.
And when you started your Salesforce journey, I saw, because I read your profile, and so you had like some experience with Salesforce Core, but you also touched like some marketing products such as Pardot a bit. What can you explain? How did you ended up like approaching Salesforce, and what products came first in your journey?
So for me, I first started working with Salesforce in utilities. And it was a time when Classic was new. So it was a long time ago. And we used to have an old adage. The company I worked with was, you buy Salesforce and it's like a box full of things. And what we used to do is we used to buy that box. We used to take everything out and then we used to put our own stuff in. And we thought Salesforce was very much as a platform. It's we're not going to use any of the standard functionality. We love the platform. We love the stability it gives us. And we're going to build our solutions on top of that. That gave me a really good insight into the platform, the underlying platform, the security protocols, how things work. How do you think about sharing across the platform? But it didn't give me a particularly good insight into any of the core products. I didn't know Sales Cloud particularly well. I didn't know Service Cloud particularly well. So then for me, once I had that foundation understanding of the platform itself, it was then adding the building blocks on top of that. Okay, how do I now learn sales? How do I now learn service? How do I learn marketing, for example? And marketing has never been a great skill of mine, but it's something I was always curious about. And I think once you've learned sales and once you've learned Sales Cloud, I guess that's the next iteration of a sales process is, okay, well, how do you start to think about lead generation and marketing return on ad spend and that kind of stuff. And I think it was less so for me a product understanding and more from a process perspective in terms of I did a few Sales Cloud projects and I kind of got an understanding, okay, well, this is what we do with the leads when they come in. This is how we manage them. This is how we work with them. But for me, the black box was always, well, how do you get the lead in the first place? So trying to understand that process and then the products that worked with that and enabled that process, I think was kind of how I went about it.
Okay, that's very interesting. And so after this year, you arrive in Australia, still working for Just Eat.
Yes.
And how did you adapt yourself to the Australian market? Was it difficult or easy? Like, how did you feel arriving in Australia as a Salesforce professional?
Yeah, I guess I had somewhat of a soft landing because I was coming into a business that I already knew. And yes, there were some geographical differences, but largely I knew how the business operated. I knew the systems that they used. I knew the processes that they had. So I think for me, that was a good introduction into the market. I think the big learning for me was when I then stepped outside of that comfort zone. And I think that process for me, I guess what I talked about earlier in terms of end user is great, but if you're curious and you want to do more, you get to a point in your career where it's one client is probably not enough. You need to kind of go beyond that. And so then I stepped into consulting, and I think that's for me where I then learned the big differences. That's the big thing for me, where I learned the different geographies. And I think kind of coming into Menulog, knowing the business, but not knowing the geography, not knowing the culture or the behaviors, I think gave me that opportunity to have one area of my career that I was comfortable with and an area that I wasn't. And then I guess when I kind of moved into consulting, it was probably the other way around. By that time, I was quite comfortable with the Australian market, the culture, how people work here, what the differences are. And then being able to step into consulting, which was very different for me.
And so when you arrive in consulting, it was at DXC?
I joined a company called System Partners, who were a specialist Salesforce consulting partner and were in the process of being acquired by DXC. So I joined right on the cusp of System Partners becoming DXC.
And how do you like the opportunity to become a practice founder came from DXC to Jarvis?
I guess it's an interesting journey in terms of like System Partners and DXC was a huge step for me. It was taking what I already knew for one customer and being able to apply that to many different. But also it's a real opportunity for me to share a lot of my learning. I think I was probably a little bit more experienced than some of the other people that were coming into a similar role from me. They'd potentially taken a different route, maybe come from graduate program, maybe built their way up in a consultancy. Whereas by that time in my career, I was probably 10 years in. I'd worked with a few different businesses. I'd worked with a lot of different products. And it gave me a really good opportunity to share my learning. I think the thing for me was working in a large consultancy wasn't for me.
Why not?
I guess I like to have a direct impact into the things that I do. And I still kind of had that from a customer perspective. But I felt the world around me was very big. And I didn't feel that I personally had an impact into that environment. So I decided, okay, this is probably not for me. It's something I maybe want to do differently and find that balance between a consultancy, but something that was a little bit smaller. But also something that I could put my own stamp on, something that I could do differently. And two colleagues of mine, Yanis and Pascal, who are the co-founders of Jarvis, I followed their journey really closely. I was really interested in what they were doing. I worked quite closely with them at DXC. And was really intrigued by how they work. And for those who don't know them, and I know you've met them and you've done some work with them, and they're a very intriguing partnership.
Okay.
Yanis is extremely technical. He's a CTA.
Yeah.
He's very, very good at understanding business problems and translating technical solutions into business language.
Okay.
Pascal is the entrepreneur. He's the ideas guy, and he's the real, I call him the glue of Jarvis. He's the guy that kind of really ties everything together. And, and it's very, those two as a partnership for me was what was intriguing about Jarvis.
Okay.
I joined quite early on in their journey, a year in, and they were only 3 or 4 people at the time. And the remit at the time was, okay, we want you to join as a solution architect. We want you to help build on some of our projects. And for me, that was an amazing opportunity. Working directly with Yanis, knowing, okay, the way he works, the methodologies that he uses, and that knowledge he has of being a CTA. For me as a solution architect is like a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Wow. So it must be like very like special in a way. Like what makes and I think here it's an interesting question. What makes a difference between someone that is good and someone that is exceptional in terms of architecturing from your point of view?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's someone that can, it sounds really corny, but someone that can see into the future.
Okay.
And if I think about the excellent solution architects that I work with today, they're able to understand, okay, this solution solves the problem today, but is it scalable? Is it going to solve the same problem for this business in 2 years' time or 3 years' time or 4 years' time? If you work with a business and they're growing 10% year on year or 20% year on year, the solutions that you put in today are not maybe going to be the right ones in 2 years' time or 3 years' time. So that's always the really interesting part for me is when I work with a really good solution architect, is being able to think about, this is the right solution today and it solves the problem today, but does it give us the right foundation moving forwards?
Okay. So like future-proof solution. Wow, that's very interesting. And so you started with the team. So and could you explain how did you grow the team? Because today, like, you must be about like 50 to 100 people.
So the business as a whole.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yep. So how did you grow the business from like 0 to 50 to 100 people?
Yeah, it's a journey. And there's different parts of that journey where you need different things. I think as a startup, you very quickly realize there aren't the normal functions that you would rely on. You don't have a finance department. You don't have an HR. You don't have a recruitment. And you've always got to be able to decouple working on the business and working in the business.
Okay, that's very interesting.
And you've got to be able to do both at the same time very early on. It's, okay, how do I keep the work coming? How do I keep the customers happy? How do I keep moving forwards in that scenario? But how do I keep growing the business? What processes can I put in place? How can I make things more automated? How can I make things more repeatable? And then as you grow and you kind of start to scale up a bit more, you can then start to bringing other people around you and bring them into those things. And then that balance of working in versus working on starts to shift a little bit. You get a little bit more time to work on the business as opposed to working in the business.
What's your favorite part of it? Like, what do you feel is the most exciting?
For me, it's building the business. For me, it's putting your stamp on something and being able to kind of look back and go, yeah, we did that. And like, for me personally, I've never been someone who likes the limelight. I'm the limelight.
I don't know what it is.
I don't like to be the focal point. I don't like to be the one front and center. For me, it's always about, how do I enable a team or a group of people to get the accolades? And that for me has always been the most, I guess, enjoyable part of the journey, is seeing what I do enabling other people to grow and to become those focal points and get those accolades.
A bit like a football coach at the end.
And again, you see that, I guess, in football coaching is you'll see the ones that want the limelight. They're on the front of the magazines and they're dressed in and you see the others that are still in a tracksuit running coaching every day.
Yeah, it's a very good analogy. And one of the example that you can mention, that we can mention, is like the certification partner program. I remember that a few years ago you won it with Jarvis.
Yes.
What is the process behind like ensuring that everyone in the team upskills and gets the certification? Like, could you tell us about that?
Yeah, for me, it's all about curiosity.
Okay.
And very early in Jarvis, that was one of our values when we were growing the business was we want to bring people into the business who are curious.
Okay.
We want to understand, okay, we don't just want people who are going to come, do 9 to 5 and then go home.
Yeah.
They want to be built into building they want to be built into the journey. They want to be built into building the company. And I think we did a really good job in bringing people in that were bought into that journey. They knew that they weren't coming in to just work a normal consulting role. They knew that they were coming in to learn new things and be curious and go out and do other things. And I think the Salesforce certification program is one of the easiest ways to do that. I think large part of the training is free. There's a really excellent Trailhead platform, a lot of curated training material. It's very easy to now go on and do a learning journey where you can learn a new product. I think for me, coming from a world where that didn't exist. Like I started my Salesforce career before Trailhead was a thing. And you had to learn your certs from reading the documentation and using the products and understanding, which in a way worked really well, but it made the journey that much longer. So having things like Trailhead available, but also having the right people with the right mindset, I think is huge. Like we couldn't have won those certification competitions as a leadership team on our own. It's all about the people we had in the business, their curiosity and their wanting to learn, to be able to, and I guess the underlying thing is to be able to deliver a great service to their customers. I think a lot of the people, yes, they're curious about what we do, and yes, they're curious about the products and how they implement them. But if I go back again to like the root cause, what is it ultimately they're trying to achieve? It's to deliver an excellent service to the customers.
Okay, I understand. And I saw that you are still like, I think another question that I have for you is, yes, like we are quite lucky to have Trailhead. There is not many companies that deliver like a learning platform online that is that good, with the playground and things like it's quite good. Like recently you did like the Vertex, Google Vertex certification. What was your experience to learn like a Google product on a Google learning platform compared to Trailhead? Is it as good? How different it is?
Yeah, it's interesting, I guess. At a high level, it's very similar.
Okay.
The platform itself is quite similar, but they deliver the training in a slightly different way.
Okay.
And I think for me, the goal wasn't necessarily to move from Salesforce to Google. It was to experience something different, and I guess broaden my horizons a little bit more. I think I'm always conscious of when I'm working with a customer, I don't want to have just one box of solutions that I can work with. I want to try and understand a bit more around, and especially like Google, I think is a really good example where the Google as a product or Google as a suite of products is quite long reaching. And I think you look at many different customers, they'll use Google for email, they'll use Gmail, they'll use GCP, they'll use BigQuery, and they'll use Salesforce. So I think there's a lot of correlations of how the two products work well together.
Even if we look from the Agentforce point of view, Agentforce rely on external learning large language model like OpenAI, Gemini, like so basically when you come to see a client and you know what's behind Agentforce, which can be like Google LLM, it makes you even more powerful in building like the trust with the customer. Don't you think?
I do. And I think that was, I guess, the big thing for me as well. And part of that Google learning journey was being able to get behind the LLM, try and understand, okay, well, how is an LLM put together? What effect does what an LLM is trained on have to how it operates and the outcome that it produces? What are the more finer details of tuning a model? Like you say, because Salesforce uses external models and not its own, the Salesforce training doesn't include those kind of aspects. And I think for me, I'm moving into a world where I provide a lot more strategy advice to our customers on implementing AI. So for me, understanding, okay, well, what goes into building an AI model? What do you need to look for? And bias, I think, is a great example of that, where when you're implementing Salesforce and you're implementing Agentforce, you rely on the model having been trained to do what it is that you need it to do. And you don't necessarily think so much around, okay, well, how was that model trained? What does it do? What information does it have? So then going a level deeper for me and going through that Google training program and understanding, okay, well, how do you make sure that a model is trained to not bias a certain group of people was really interesting. And
so just what is Google Vertex? In a few, I don't know what it is.
So Google Vertex is Google's AI. I need to I need to think about that question for a second. So
we can put it into stuff. Do you want me to re-ask the question? So okay. So I smile like this. So could you tell us what is Google Vertex?
So Google Vertex is Google's machine learning tool. And it gets far too technical for me, but it allows you to understand and adapt the workings of an LLM model. And it allows you to use some of the Google base models. So Gemini is a good example. And adapt that model to your specific requirements. It also allows you to build your own custom models from the ground up as well. So again, if I guess compare that to something like Agentforce, where Agentforce uses pre-made models. It uses models that are already available. Vertex goes one level deeper. It allows you to train a model on your own data and train a model to be specific to the task that you're asking it to do, rather than, I guess, a general open model like OpenAI or Gemini.
I understand. So it's tools that are very complementary at the end of the day. And so what was your experience with Agentforce as an individual, but also at Jarvis as a practice? How did you ramp up the knowledge skills over there? And what is your global experience of the product?
I think so. My journey with Agentforce started, and I was privileged enough to be part of the Dreamforce announcement when Agentforce was originally announced. So I was at Dreamforce when Agentforce was announced, and it was amazing. The amount of time and effort that Salesforce put into training a lot of different people. And we saw at Dreamforce that Salesforce flew in a lot of their solution engineers to learn Agentforce at Dreamforce. And we were lucky enough that Jarvis was part of that cohort as well. So then again at Jarvis, that then starts to breed the curiosity. Jarvis has gone through this training program. He's understood Agentforce. I was lucky enough to be on the ground there while it was happening. And doing the trailheads live in Dreamforce as well. So you come home from an event like Dreamforce and you've got all that hype and you've got all that Agentforce, and you immediately want to start to share that and start to learn that. And I think that's what we did as a company was, okay, this new product is coming. It's not just a new product. It's going to change the way people work. It's going to change how things are done. And it was for me, it was that next iteration in how to do things. We've had a lot of automation over the years, and we've had a varying degrees and I guess progress in automation. But Agentforce was that next step beyond that. It wasn't just automation. It was also decision making. It's also being able to run a process. It's being able to have dynamic, I guess, decision trees within a product that you didn't have to pre-program. And I think that was the real interesting thing that we saw. If you compare, I guess, Agentforce to the Einstein chatbots, Einstein chatbots are great and are still a great solution today, but they're quite linear. You have to almost program the path and the journey to be able to say, okay, you go from step 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. I think when we looked at Agentforce and went, wow, this could actually include reasoning, and this could actually make decisions to say, well, I've done step 1, 2 doesn't make sense, so I'm going to go straight to 3. But also to have those guardrails in there that says, okay, well, don't go outside of these boundaries. Yes, you've got some flexibility around how you do things, the questions that you ask, how you ask them, what actions you take, but being able to also define the guardrails that says, well, don't go outside of this as well. Was that to me was really interesting.
That's a very interesting product. How do you feel you implemented like this solution in Australia? Do you see like the customer being excited about the product? What's your view on like the current Agentforce journey?
It's really interesting to see, I guess, customers' reactions. You get a real mix of reactions. You get customers who are really excited. They really see the opportunities that it opened up, and they really embrace that. And we've got a few customers that run experimentation methodologies where they take new technologies and they run experiments, and the outcome of those experiments might be, this isn't ready for us yet. But also the opposite of that could be, this is great. It solves a problem. It solves a process for us. Let's put it in place. And I think you see customers that are willing to embrace the new technology and willing to get involved in things like pilot programs and do those kind of things. But you also see the flip side of that. You also see the customers that are very nervous. And I always kind of look at, in the news, you always only ever hear the negative stories. And we hear a lot about data breaches and that being, and it's interesting that a lot of the data breaches that we've seen, or at least the large ones, are not to do with AI solutions. They're not to do with Agentforce or any other AI solution. A lot of the data breaches you see today are people being able to
like phishing.
Correct. And it's social engineering as well. It's exploiting the human in the process, not the technology. But I think that just because of those stories and because of that information being out there, makes people naturally nervous about new technology. It's interesting. You see that range of emotions.
I think from the point of view of the trailhead journey for Agentforce with the different badge that they propose, something that was very interesting to learn is how you can use Agentforce internally as a employee that is using Salesforce. I think this is a very good starting point to implement the solution rather maybe than having like a customer facing solution. And there is a lot of part of the product that are less shown, such as like the field generation, all of that. I think it's quite interesting. Don't you think?
I do. And I think internally is always an easier playground than externally. And again, you see customers and kind of embrace that idea of, okay, well, let's build something internally. Let's use it internally first. Because mistakes internally are also much more easy to forgive than externally as well. And like you say, you see people using, and it might just be a small AI solution of generating a field or generating an email template or doing something. But I think that then breeds more curiosity. We're currently going through a process at the moment whereby a customer has asked us to implement a number of AI solutions in a service world where the outcome is just to decide which team should work on a case.
Okay, yeah.
But we're kind of taking that and looking at that and going, okay, well, how do we set that as a foundation for what could be a multi-agentic process as well?
Okay.
And kind of looking at that and going, okay, well, let's build a triage agent that understands, okay, what all the different teams do and how to allocate work out to those different teams and when. But also then let's start to think about, well, what's the next level down? What are the other agents that triage agent then hands off to?
Okay. Yes, that's very interesting. So it's like multiple agents that are able to collaborate together. You know? Wow.
And I think I guess the way I think about this is in terms of today we've got very well-defined human structures in terms of people do specific roles and they've got specific job titles and they've got specific boundaries around what they do and what they don't do. At a first instance, implementing agentic AI, that structure, you can almost replicate it and say, okay, well, you've got someone today who sits in a contact center whose job it is to triage a case when it comes in and work out where it needs to go to and what team needs to work on it.
Yeah.
As long as you can articulate those rules and you can articulate those boundaries, there's no reason why that can't be done by agentic AI.
Yeah.
And then you go the next step into the process and you say, okay, well, we've got a specific biosecurity team that deals with biosecurity cases and they work off this specific knowledge bank. Okay, well, if they're working off a specific set of knowledge and specific set of information, why don't we build a process that can read that information? And first pass might be, okay, let's allocate a case to that team. Let's read the information and then let's give them some guidance on, okay, someone has raised a case about termites in their delivery, for example. This is what we would generally do. This is what the documentation says.
Yeah.
Here you go, human, you deal with that.
Okay.
But again, I think it's going back to that, your question earlier around what makes a good solution or what makes a good solution architect is thinking about 3 or 4 steps ahead.
Okay, yeah, I understand. And I think like the current solution of Agentforce, because I think it's like they are a startup, basically. It's a startup within Salesforce where they innovate really fast. I think we are still at the stage where we build agent for a specific solution. But don't you think it would be super nice to have a sort of map where you can connect the agent and define their function? I think we are not still there in the Salesforce Agentforce map where we build team of agents, and this might be like in the next version of the product. Don't you think?
I do, and I think. Like you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. Like my goal, I guess, is to learn a lot more about AI as a whole and AI strategy. And part of my learning, I've been doing a lot of stuff. And one of the concepts I've learned is the difference between endpoint solutions and process solutions.
I don't know what's the difference.
So we're very much at a point today where we implement endpoint solutions.
Okay.
We look at how something is done today and we look to automate it.
Okay.
And so I guess in my example, we of the CX team, we look at the role that a CX agent does today and we look, can we replace that with agentic AI?
Okay.
And we go, okay, great. Yes, we can. I think the next step beyond that is, how do we design processes that are AI native?
Okay.
How do we design, don't take a process that's done by a human and automate it. It's how do we design that process that it could be done by AI and it could be done differently.
Okay.
I think that's, I guess, the next iteration of how we start to look at solutions is not how do we replace processes that were designed to be run by humans. It's how do we design processes that are actually designed to be run by AI.
Oh, that's very interesting. And this is part of your journey, AI with Craig. Could you tell us, because it's good, like it's always an interesting tips that you give on artificial intelligence. Could you explain how did you came up with this idea of learning and sharing, and where it will go in the future?
Yeah, so. I wanted to, I knew I wanted to learn more. And I knew that I had kind of been, I guess, in the Salesforce world for a long period of time. And I knew the Salesforce products really well. And given my background as a BA, I was relatively experienced at being able to give customers strategy advice and think about strategy. But I wanted to then, I guess, expand that into what does that mean in an AI-enabled world?
Okay.
And I had a base level understanding of AI. I kind of worked with Agentforce for a lot of the time. I knew what an LLM was. I knew the different types of discriminative and generative AI and what that meant. But I wanted to go on a personal journey in terms of I want to expand on that knowledge and I want to understand, okay, where do we go from here?
Okay.
It's an amazing world that we're in today.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I post about quite a lot is speed of delivery always used to be the deciding factor. We could do a design in 2 or 3 weeks, but that might take 6 months to deliver.
Okay.
I think we're almost in an opposite world now where speed to delivery is not the blocker.
Okay.
It's actually the speed of the design and making sure you've got the right constraints in place and you've got the right security protocols.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go on that journey.
Yeah.
But I also wanted a way of how can I share that with others around me as well.
Yeah.
And I've never been someone who is, this is mine. Like I'm going to protect this. If I learn something, I want to talk about it and I want to share it with people.
Yeah.
And that was the easiest way for me to do that, was to say, okay, well, I'm going to have this. And all it is a hashtag today. It doesn't exist anywhere else, but it's a way of me connecting all of those things together to say, if someone wants to follow my learning journey, well, here's a way you could do that. You can look at these posts.
And also it's beneficial in so many ways. Like I think for yourself, for Jarvis, also it's like a sort of multiplier, because like by having like people following your journey, it makes it so much exciting for you to have the motivation to learn the new things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great thing to do. Do you feel, is it possible today as a Salesforce professional to have a role that is fully dedicated to artificial intelligence or not?
Wow. Yes, I think so. But I would look, and again, for me, I would look outside the boundaries of what is Salesforce capable of.
Okay, yeah.
And that's not, like, I love the Salesforce products. I think Salesforce 9 times out of 10 is still the best solution in the market.
Yeah.
But it's being aware of that 1 time out of 10 when it's not.
Yeah.
And I think, is there a role for someone to be a specific AI consultant with Salesforce specifically today? Yeah. Not yet. Is there a role for someone to be an AI solutions consultant that heavily leans on the Salesforce products? Yes, I think there is.
Okay.
And I think a lot of what you see in the market today and a lot of the blockers are people don't know where to start.
Okay.
And I think the great thing for someone who comes from a Salesforce background is starting on Salesforce is very easy.
Yeah.
Standing up a playground, going through Trailhead, start going through, like you say, the Trailblazer statuses.
Yeah.
And that gives someone, I guess, the education of what's possible in AI.
Yeah.
And that starts to then, I think, get rid of that nervousness.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. Mostly when the product is already built, it's just like an enablement, basically, of the AI part.
Mm-hmm.
So from your point of view, yeah, I think it will be very interesting. And your recommendation will be to learn Agentforce, like Salesforce itself, like I think Data Cloud, and to learn also outside of Salesforce what is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you feel is important to learn outside of Google Vertex and Salesforce, for example? Mm-hmm. Is there other products that you have in mind that are key?
Yeah, I think, and you touched on it a second ago, I think Data Cloud is also a big one.
Yeah.
And I think it's oftentimes it's the part that people miss when thinking about an Agentforce implementation as well, because it's the bit in the background that no one sees. It's where all the data lives. It's where all the reporting comes from. It's where all the auditability is. That for me is also a key concept. And I guess it goes the same for any AI implementation is learning where the data comes from and learning where the data is stored as well. Like AI as a tool and AI as a function is amazing. But it's only as good as the model that it's trained on and the data that it has access to. So for a consultant thinking about implementing those types of tools, being aware of the underlying data and whether that's data cloud, whether that's BigQuery, whether that's AWS, it's just having an understanding of that infrastructure.
And what was your experience with data cloud? Because I saw that you were quite skilled or proficient with Datorama or marketing cloud intelligence before it was integrated. Do you feel like having the skill to implement the Datorama platform really helps you to get started with data cloud, or what was your journey and your point of view?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think having a base level understanding of data analysis and the different tools that are available. I've done work with Tableau in the past. I've done work with Power BI. So understanding, I guess, data structures and how that works, I think was a really key thing for data cloud. I think the other thing for me as well was just getting my hands dirty and getting on the tool. I think we were lucky enough that we started working with data cloud in its previous iterations.
CDP?
I think it's had about 4 different names since then. But yeah, it's I think it's just going through that journey of trying to understand, okay, well, what problems can this solve for me? And where is it right? And a lot of conversations I have with customers today is, if you asked me 3 or 4 years ago, I want to see this information in my Salesforce CRM. What do I do? Generally, the answer was, okay, well, you need to build some form of integration to store it in CRM to then be able to see it. Like, we don't live in that world anymore. Virtualization of data is so much easier. And data cloud is so much better at holding and visualizing large volumes of data. And now we're seeing that switch where customers have got CRMs where their storage is over bloated because they've put all this information in their CRM, which at the point in time, it made sense. You wanted to be able to see it. You wanted to be able to interact with it. But now with the ability of data cloud to be able to store that large volume of data, but also to be able to visualize it inside CRM, it is huge, I think.
And there is the zero copy part.
That's right.
This one was that was a hard one for me to understand because it's strange because you still see the data in data cloud, but it's not existing from my understanding. It's still existing in the other. It's just like having a window to another system, basically. Is that correct?
Yeah, it works on virtualization. So yeah, you're right. The data sits in its host system, but you can virtualize it and you can see it somewhere else.
Wow, this is I think for someone non-technical, it can be a hard concept to understand.
It can, yeah.
But okay, so, and do you feel like today learning Agentforce require, or it's really advised to learn data cloud as well, because the 2 products are complementary?
Yeah, I would say so. And I'd say almost the learning of data cloud, I think, is more important. And I think that's because it's so much ingrained in every other Salesforce product. And you can tell that Salesforce strategy about building on top of data cloud is the way that they're moving forwards. And yes, Agentforce is the tool today. But is Agentforce going to be the next AI tool, or is there going to be a different iteration of that? I think I'm much more comfortable that data cloud is the foundation. And then we're going to see many more different AI and agentic processes that come on top of that that may or not be driven by Agentforce.
And does all your customer at Jarvis use data cloud? No.
No, it's still a journey. I think it's still, and I think the consumption-based pricing, I think, was something that kind of curved that journey for a lot of people, especially people that have been in the Salesforce world for a long time. Consumption-based pricing is quite new. And you kind of saw the nervousness around that. But I think now people are starting to realize the value of Data Cloud. And I think you see those customers that have embraced it early, and they're really starting to see the outcomes of that today. And customers, I think, are a lot more open to the use of Data Cloud. I think it often takes time for a tool to get some publicity, for people to see other people using it. And again, you kind of see that different mentality of someone who wants to be first and wants to experiment and wants to use it. Whereas you often see the opposite mentality of they want someone else to go first. And they want someone else to see them using it and make sure, okay, is it going to be right for my business? But I think we're coming to that point now where there's enough case studies on Data Cloud, there's enough customers using it, there's enough positive publicity, that jump to consumption-based pricing is not a blocker anymore.
And I think one of the very good strategy of Salesforce is to to enable Data Cloud as soon as you get a new product. So for example, like all the as you mentioned, building on top, like all the Marketing Cloud product now, I think require Data Cloud to function. And I think this is a very interesting soft way to introduce the product to the customer. Don't you think?
I do, but I also think it's a great way for customers that are just coming onto the platform now to set the right foundation. I think customers coming on now where they have that choice of, do I put my data in Data Cloud or do I put my data directly in CRM? I think for us, certainly when we start to look at greenfield implementations today, Data Cloud is always part of that consideration. It's okay, well, we know that this is all the data that we need to store in the system and this is how we need to make it available. But having the options around where you store that data makes the solution so much more valuable.
Wow. Yeah, that's it. That's interesting. I think it's exciting to be part of this new Salesforce world in a way.
It is, and it's I find it really interesting. We kind of go through these journeys in terms of having products and having iterations of those products, and then you see new products come in that just it's not an iteration anymore. It's a new journey. And I think Data Cloud and Agentforce are part of those new journeys where if you're designing a greenfield implementation today, you probably go about that very differently than if you would have, say, 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Now it's stable, like in a way. And so, like for you, what are the next step at Jarvis, like as a like enterprise, like account executive? Could you explain us how do you see that for the future?
Yeah, for me, it's how do I take my knowledge and my experience and deliver that to our customers and to future customers as well. And I think my goal is to deliver value. Like I said to you before, I'm not a traditional salesperson in that I'm not going to kind of sell by making relationships and going out. I'm going to sell by generating value. And I think for me, I still see myself as a consultant. I don't see myself as a salesperson. My job is to work with our customers to make sure that they're successful and they get the right outcomes and they make sure that they see all of the different opportunities available to them. And I think that's the goal for me, is to start to expand on that and start to find customers that want to go on that journey and work with them to deliver that value and be part of their journey. Ultimately, for Jarvis, we've always said our success lies in our customer success. It's not for us to be successful as a business independently. It's for seeing our customers grow and seeing the solutions that we put in place. How does that drive the performance of their business? And how does that enable them to move into their futures. And that resonates with me personally as well. It's not about me. It's not about my journey. It's about how can I deliver value to as many different people as possible.
Wow, that's very inspiring, actually. But I think it was great to have this conversation with you. And yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you very
great.
much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.